Blood has a price in New York City, and mine was worth $10,000 per pint. I didn't know that when I woke up in the basement 9 weeks ago, zip-tied to a medical chair with an IV already threading into my arm. Didn't know my veins carried liquid gold, AB negative, Rh null variant, rarer than diamonds, more valuable than cocaine. Didn't know that my blood type appeared in less than 50 people worldwide, or that someone had been hunting me specifically, tracking my medical records like a predator studying prey. I knew now. The mop clattered against Grand Central's marble floor as my knees unlocked. Not now, not here, not in front of 300 commuters who'd step over my corpse without breaking stride. But my body had other plans. The fever that had been my constant companion for 72 hours spiked viciously, turning the terminal into a kaleidoscope of blurred Christmas lights and distorted faces. "Just finish the shift, Maya," I whispered to myself, gripping the mop handle like it was the only thing tethering me to consciousness. 6 hours, $80. Find somewhere warm that isn't the tunnels. My reflection in the brass directory kiosk showed a stranger, hollow eyes sunken into a face that had shed 23 pounds in 9 weeks. The infected gash on my left cheek, a brand really, burned into my skin with heated metal, throbbed with my pulse. The white maintenance uniform hung off my frame like a burial shroud. I was disappearing, becoming translucent, a ghost haunting the same marble floors I used to cross in scrubs, and a white coat, back when I was a person instead of a resource. The night supervisor knew what I was. Everyone in the underground economy knew. That's why he paid cash and didn't ask why my hands shook or why I sometimes bled through my sleeves. $60 for the shift, $20 extra for his silence. In Manhattan's shadow economy, discretion cost extra. I pressed my palm against my left forearm, feeling the heat radiating beneath the skin. The spot where they'd taken blood that morning was swollen, angry red streaks climbing toward my elbow. Sepsis, probably. Cellulitis at minimum. My medical training cataloged the symptoms with detached clinical precision. Fever, tachycardia, altered mental status, hypotension. I was dying by degrees, and they'd keep draining me until there was nothing left. The station doors opened. December wind sliced through the terminal, carrying snow and the smell of hot pretzels and exhaust. I shivered so violently the mop clattered to the floor. Just cold. Just tired. Just survive the next 5 minutes, then the 5 after that, then... The crowd changed. I'd learned to read crowds working nights at Grand Central. Late commuters moved in chaotic patterns, everyone in their own world brushing past each other with New York indifference. But this was different. This was water, parting around a shark. This was silence, dropping over noise like a heavy curtain. I looked up. He moved. Through the terminal like gravity itself bent to accommodate him. Tall, over 6'3" even at this distance, dressed in black that made shadows cling to him like they belonged there. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from obsidian. Beautiful in the way sharp things are beautiful. Dangerous. But it was the ink that marked him as something other. Tattoos crawled up from the collar of his black shirt. Intricate patterns that wrapped around his throat like fingers. I'd seen enough criminal ink during my ER rotations to recognize family marks. But this wasn't Italian or Russian or even Yakuza. This was something else. Korean, maybe. Elegant and lethal, the kind of tattoos that told a story written in violence. The crowd parted wider. Even the transit cops near the ticket windows looked away, suddenly fascinated by their phones. That kind of power, the kind that made authority itself flinch, wasn't earned through fear alone. It was inherited, cultivated, fed with blood and brutality until it became as natural as breathing. His entourage followed. 3 men in dark suits moving with the coordinated precision of trained killers wearing business casual. One spoke into his sleeve. Another scanned the terminal with eyes that cataloged threats in microseconds. The third kept his hand inside his jacket, ready. I needed to move, needed to fade into the background like I'd been taught. Maintenance workers were furniture, seen but not noticed. Stay invisible. Stay safe. Stay... My legs buckled. The first step was wrong. My knee unlocked like a hinge with a missing pin. I caught myself on the mop handle, but my grip was weak, my arms trembling. The terminal spun, not the gentle sway of exhaustion, but a violent tilting, like the whole building had been knocked off its foundation. Gray crept in from the edges of my vision, tunnel vision. The medical term popped into my head with detached clarity. Sign of shock, hypovolemic probably, blood pressure dropping, heart rate compensating, body shutting down non-essential systems to protect the core. I was going to faint. Not here, not now, not in front of... My knees gave out completely. The mop clattered to marble. I fell forward, bracing for impact, and didn't hit the ground. Strong arms caught me mid-collapse, pulling me against a chest that felt like granite wrapped in expensive wool. My head lolled against fabric that smelled nothing like the tunnels. Cedarwood, leather, something warm and masculine and completely foreign to the life I'd been living. "I've got you." The voice was deep, quiet, with the faintest trace of an accent that softened the edges of his English. Korean, definitely, but educated abroad. The kind of voice that commanded rooms without raising its volume. I tried to speak, to apologize, to explain that I was fine and didn't need help, but my tongue was thick in my mouth, my body unresponsive. Through half-closed eyes, I saw him. Sharp features, eyes so dark they swallowed light. A face that belonged on ancient warrior paintings, beautiful and brutal in equal measure. The tattoos continued under his collar. I could see the edge of symbols I couldn't read, intricate patterns that marked him as something powerful, something feared. He adjusted his hold, one arm under my knees, the other supporting my back. His hand brushed my forearm, the one with the fresh needle mark, and I felt him go absolutely still. The world narrowed to that point of contact, his fingers warm against my fever-hot skin. The moment his thumb grazed the swollen puncture wound hidden beneath my sleeve. Then he pushed the fabric up. I tried to pull away, but I had no strength. Could only watch as he exposed the evidence I'd been hiding for 9 weeks. The needle marks in distinct patterns. 4 oval bruises the color of old wine, finger-shaped, unmistakable, and beneath them, the older scars. Track marks that looked like drug abuse, but told a different story to anyone who knew what to look for. His entire body went rigid, those dark eyes fixed on my arm with an intensity that should have terrified me. But there was no confusion in his gaze, no curiosity, recognition, like he'd seen this before, like he knew exactly what those marks meant, what they represented, who made them. His jaw clenched, the tattoos on his throat shifting as he swallowed. When he looked up at the crowd, at the commuters pretending not to watch, his face had transformed. The beautiful brutality became just brutal. A predator, identifying prey. He was scanning for someone, the handlers, the ones who always watched to make sure their livestock didn't run. Who did this? His voice had changed. Still quiet, but there was steel underneath now. Something ancient and dangerous lurking beneath the civilized surface. The kind of rage that burned cold instead of hot. I pulled weakly at my sleeve, trying to cover the evidence. Muscle memory. Hide it, deny it, survive. I'm fine, just clumsy. I fell... At me? The way he said it made clear he knew I was lying. His hand moved to my face, fingers gentle as they tilted my chin. His thumb brushed the edge of my bandage. And this? He pulled the gauze aside before I could stop him. I watched his face as he saw the brand. The infected, jagged scar that marked me as property. The Korean symbol burned into my cheek with a heated blade. His expression went absolutely cold, not angry, beyond anger, a kind of lethal calm that made my blood run ice cold despite the fever. "Vessel," he murmured in Korean, then louder to someone behind him, "Bring the car, now." "Wait!" I tried to push away from him, to stand on my own, but my body was done obeying commands. I can't, I don't even know you. My name is Dante Shin." He said it like it should mean something, like the name itself carried weight. When I just stared blankly, something that might have been approval flickered in those dark eyes. And right now, what you need is medical attention, food, and somewhere safe to recover. I can provide all 3. I have to... My voice cracked. I have to go back. If they realize I'm gone, they already know. He started walking, carrying me like I weighed nothing. "They're watching right now, which means you can't go back. Not ever." The terminal blurred as he moved. I saw his men forming a protective barrier around us, hands inside jackets, eyes scanning the crowd with lethal focus. The commuters parted like water, instinctively giving space to violence barely leashed. "This is kidnapping," I mumbled against his shoulder, too exhausted to fight. "This is theft," he finished. His arms tightened around me. "You were stolen first. I'm simply stealing you back." Cold air hit us as we exited onto 42nd Street. A black SUV idled at the curb, windows tinted so dark they looked like solid sheets of obsidian. One of his men opened the door. Dante slid inside, still holding me, and the door closed. The world outside became muffled, distant. Inside smelled like leather and danger and something else. Safety, maybe. The kind I'd forgotten existed. He settled me on the seat beside him, his hand steady on my shoulder. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." Safe? The word felt foreign. When was the last time I'd felt safe? Before the syndicate, before Detective Marcus Hayes, before I learned that my rare blood type was worth more than my medical degree. Where are we going? My voice was barely a whisper. My home. He pulled his jacket off and draped it over my shivering shoulders. The fabric was warm from his body heat, impossibly soft. "I have doctors. They'll treat the infection, the malnutrition, the—" His jaw clenched again as he looked at my branded cheek. "Everything." Why? The question hung between us. Why would a man who looked like walking death itself save someone like me? What did he want? His hand moved to my face, thumb tracing the air beside my bandage without touching. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but there was something underneath, something personal. Because I recognized the mark, and I thought I'd burned that operation to the ground 2 years ago. The SUV pulled into traffic. Through the window, I watched Grand Central disappear behind us. The terminal where I'd been invisible, the tunnels where I'd been hiding, the life I'd been barely surviving. "They'll come for me," I whispered. "The syndicate always collects what's theirs. Let them." Dante's dark eyes met mine, and for the first time since I'd become a ghost, I saw something more terrifying than my captors. I saw war. "I've been looking for an excuse to finish what I started. You just gave me one." I woke to silk. Not the rough institutional cotton of hospital sheets, and definitely not the mildewed blanket I'd been using in the tunnels. This was the kind of fabric that whispered against skin, cool and impossibly soft, like water, made solid. My eyes opened to darkness, but it was the wrong kind. Not the oppressive black of underground spaces, but something deeper, more intentional. Heavy curtains blocked what I sensed was daylight beyond. The air smelled clean, antiseptic sharp, but underneath it, something else. Cedarwood and leather, his scent. Panic should have hit immediately. Instead, my body registered comfort first. The absence of cold, of hunger pangs, of the constant low-grade terror that had become my baseline. The fever that had been consuming me felt distant, muted. An IV line ran into my left arm, the tape securing it applied with medical precision. I tried to sit up. My muscles screamed protest, weak, shaky, but functional. Better than they'd been in weeks. How long had I been unconscious? The room materialized as my eyes adjusted. Minimalist, expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows hidden behind blackout curtains. Furniture that looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine. All clean lines and dark wood. A single piece of art on the wall, a traditional Korean ink painting of a tiger, its eyes seeming to follow movement even in the dimness. This wasn't a hospital. This was someone's home. His home. The door opened without warning. No knock, no announcement. Just the smooth click of a lock, disengaging. And then he was there, filling the doorway like he filled every space, with presence that felt almost physical. Dante's shin looked different in the filtered light seeping around the curtain's edges. Less like a walking shadow, more like a man, but no less dangerous. He wore black slacks and a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, exposing forearms corded with muscle and wrapped in more of that intricate ink. The tattoos continued up his arms in patterns that seemed to tell a story I couldn't read. His dark eyes found mine immediately, and I felt the weight of that gaze like a hand pressed to my chest. "You're awake." His voice was quieter than I remembered, almost gentle. "Don't try to move too quickly. You've been unconscious for 36 hours. 36 hours, a day and a half stolen from my life. Where am I? My home, Manhattan, the penthouse." He moved into the room with fluid grace, each step deliberate. "You needed medical care. I provided it." I looked at the IV, at the medical equipment on the nightstand that I hadn't registered before, a blood pressure cuff, syringes still in sterile packaging, monitors displaying vitals I couldn't quite focus on. This wasn't just a bedroom. It was a private medical suite. "The syndicate," my voice cracked. "They'll find me. They always find—" "They won't." He stopped at the foot of the bed, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed, but eyes intense. "This building has security that makes Fort Knox look accessible. No one enters without my permission. No one." The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it highlighted a different problem. I'd escaped one cage only to wake in another. A prettier cage, certainly, but the door was still locked. "I need to go." I reached for the IV, fingers clumsy against the tape. "You need to stay still." He moved fast, faster than someone his size should move, crossing the distance between us in 2 strides. His hand caught my wrist, stopping me without hurting. His skin was warm against mine, the touch sending an unwelcome jolt of awareness through my exhausted body. "You pull that out before the doctor clears you and you'll bleed. You don't have blood to spare." I tried to jerk away. His grip didn't tighten, but it didn't release either. We stayed frozen like that, his hand circling my wrist, my pulse hammering against his fingers. Could he feel it? The way my heart rate had spiked, not from fear, but from something more complicated. "Let me go." I hated how weak my voice sounded. "No. Simple. Final." He released my wrist but didn't step back. This close, I could see details I'd missed in Grand Central. The faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the way his pupils dilated slightly when he looked at my face, the muscle ticking in his jaw. Not until you're strong enough to survive on your own, and right now, Maya Torres, you are nowhere close. Hearing my full name from his lips sent ice down my spine. "How do you—" "I know everything." He finally stepped back, giving me space to breathe. "Medical student, Columbia, 3rd year before you dropped out 8 months ago. No missing persons report filed, no family searching. You became a ghost by choice before the syndicate made it permanent." The clinical recitation of my life's collapse should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like being seen for the first time in months. Not as a vessel, not as a body to be used, but as a person with a history, with a name. "Why do you care?" The question came out sharper than intended. "What do you want from me?" His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something that looked almost like pain. "I want to know who did this. Names, locations, everything." "So you can what? Start a war?" I laughed, the sound bitter. "I'm nobody. I'm not worth—" "Don't." The word cracked like a whip. He leaned forward, hands braced on the footboard of the bed, and the intensity in his gaze pinned me in place. "Don't tell me what you're worth. The people who hurt you don't get to define your value." Before I could respond, a polite knock interrupted. This one waited for acknowledgement. "Come in," Dante called, not looking away from me. An older man entered, gray-haired and professionally dressed, carrying a medical bag that had seen significant use. He took one look at the tension between us and cleared his throat diplomatically. "Mr. Shin, I'm ready to examine the patient if you'll allow me." Dante straightened but didn't leave. Just moved to stand by the window, arms crossed, watching. The message was clear. I could be examined, but not alone. Not unprotected. The doctor approached with practiced calm. "I'm Dr. Kwan. I've been monitoring your condition since you arrived. How are you feeling?" "Tired. Weak." I watched him snap on latex gloves. Confused. "All normal, given your state." He checked the IV, then wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my upper arm. The Velcro rip was loud in the quiet room. "Your blood pressure was dangerously low when you arrived. We've been giving you fluids and electrolytes to stabilize you." The cuff tightened, released. He frowned at the reading. Still low, but improving. I need to examine your arms. May I? I wanted to refuse, wanted to keep my shame hidden under the long sleeves of whatever hospital gown they'd dressed me in. But Dr. Kwan's eyes were kind, and Dante's presence by the window felt like a shield rather than a threat. I nodded. Dr. Kwan pushed up my right sleeve first. His sharp intake of breath told me he saw what I knew was there. The landscape of abuse mapped on my skin, fresh needle marks barely scabbed over, older ones yellowed and purple, and beneath it all the finger-shaped bruises that never quite faded. How often? He asked quietly. Every 10 days. Sometimes sooner, if... I swallowed. If he needed more. They gave me iron infusions afterward to keep my heart from stopping, just so they could drain me again. He moved to the left arm. This one was worse. The puncture wound from yesterday morning, God, was it only yesterday, was angry and swollen, heat radiating from the infection spreading beneath my skin. Dr. Kwan touched the area gently and I flinched. This is badly infected. Sepsis is a real risk. He looked up at Dante. She needs aggressive antibiotic therapy. If this doesn't respond in 24 hours, we'll need to consider IV antibiotics in a hospital setting. No hospitals. Dante's voice was firm. Too many questions. Too many records. Treat her here. Dr. Kwan hesitated, then nodded. He pulled out his stethoscope, warming it against his palm before placing it against my chest. Deep breath. I obeyed, feeling the cold metal through the thin gown. He moved it across my chest, listening to my heart, my lungs. His frown deepened. Tachycardia. Your heart is working too hard, and I'm hearing some concerning sounds in your lungs. He pulled back, meeting my eyes. When did you last eat a full meal? The question shouldn't have been hard to answer, but as I tried to remember, I realized I couldn't. Days blurred together in the tunnels. Stolen crackers, a half-eaten sandwich from a trash can. Nothing that qualified as a meal. I don't know, I admitted. Dr. Kwan looked at Dante. Severe malnutrition. Her body is consuming itself for energy. Muscle wasting, likely vitamin deficiencies, and given the tremors, I'm observing. Possibly hypoglycemia. Fix it. Dante's voice allowed no argument. It's not that simple. Dr. Kwan began repacking his bag. Her digestive system has been essentially dormant. We need to reintroduce food slowly, or we risk refeeding syndrome, which can be fatal. Small amounts every 2 hours. Bland, easily digestible. I'll handle the food, Dante interrupted. You handle the infection and the blood work. Blood work. The phrase made my stomach clench. What blood work? Dr. Kwan paused, glancing at Dante as if asking permission. Dante gave a single nod. We need to understand exactly what's been done to you, Dr. Kwan explained gently. A complete blood count, metabolic panel, infectious disease screening. And, he hesitated, we need to determine how much blood volume you've actually lost. Why does that matter? This time it was Dante who answered, moving closer to the bed. Because I need to know if what I saw in that terminal was attempted murder or just criminal negligence. The coldness in his voice made me shiver despite the warm room. Dr. Kwan drew the blood quickly, professionally, labeling vials with practiced efficiency. When he reached for my face, I jerked back instinctively. I need to look at the wound on your cheek, he said softly. I won't hurt you. But his hands reaching for my face felt too much like other hands, violent hands holding me down while the brand burned into my skin. I couldn't stop the whimper that escaped. Dante was there instantly, kneeling beside the bed, positioning himself in my line of sight. Look at me. His voice was different now, not commanding, but grounding. Just at me, not him, me. I focused on his face, on the scar through his eyebrow, the sharp line of his jaw, the tattoos disappearing under his collar. Anything but the hands near my face. That's it, Dante murmured. Just keep your eyes on me. I felt the bandage peel away, felt the cool air hit the infected wound. Dr. Kwan's touch was gentle, but I gripped the sheets hard enough to hurt. Dante reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and rested his hand over mine, not grabbing, not restraining, just there, an anchor. This is very infected, Dr. Kwan said, his voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. And the scarring. This was deliberate, Precise. Someone knew exactly how deep to cut to leave a permanent mark without causing immediate mortality. "Can you read it?" Dante asked. "It's Korean, the character for vessel or container. She's been branded as property." Dr. Kwan's voice shook. "Whoever did this is a medical professional. They understand anatomy, scarification techniques. This isn't street violence. This is The next time I woke, the curtains were open. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, revealing a view of Manhattan that looked like a postcard. I could see Central Park from here, a rectangle of green in the urban jungle. This wasn't just a penthouse. This was the kind of residence that appeared in lifestyle magazines with captions like, "How the Other Half Lives." I sat up slowly, testing my body's response. Still weak, but the fog had lifted. The fever that had been my constant companion felt muted, manageable. My head was clear for the first time in weeks. The IV was gone from my arm, replaced by a small bandage over the puncture site. Someone had changed it while I slept. Someone had also changed my hospital gown for actual pajamas. Black silk, expensive, sized perfectly. The intimacy of that made my face heat. Whose hands had undressed me? Dressed me? Had Dante... "You're blushing." I jerked toward the voice. Dante sat in a chair by the window, so still I'd missed him entirely. He wore different clothes, charcoal slacks, black shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing more of the tattoos that seemed to cover most of his torso. His hair was damp, like he'd recently showered. He looked less like a mob boss and more like dangerous art. "I didn't see you there," I managed. "I noticed." He stood, moving with that same fluid grace, and approached, carrying something I hadn't noticed, a tray. "Dr. Kwan said you could start solid food. I made juke." Juke. Korean rice porridge. He set the tray on the bedside table, then began arranging pillows behind me with surprising gentleness. Bland, easily digestible, traditional sick food. "You made it." I couldn't hide my surprise. His mouth quirked in something that might have been amusement. "I'm Korean. Of course I can make juke. My Halmione would rise from her grave and beat me with a wooden spoon if I couldn't." The image of this terrifying man being threatened by his grandmother made something ease in my chest, a reminder that he was human, not just a collection of danger and darkness. He settled back in his chair, watching as I stared at the bowl. It smelled incredible. Ginger, sesame oil, something savory and comforting that made my stomach clench with desperate hunger. "Dr. Kwan said small amounts," Dante reminded me. "No more than half the bowl. Even if you're still hungry, too much too fast will make you sick." I picked up the spoon with shaking hands. The first bite was heaven. Warm, soft, flavorful in a subtle way that didn't overwhelm my ravaged system. I had to force myself to eat slowly when every instinct screamed to devour it all. Dante watched in silence. Not uncomfortable silence, but something almost companionable, like he was content to simply witness my survival. "The pajamas," I said between careful bites. "I had my assistant purchase them. She dressed you while Dr. Kwan was present." He said it matter-of-factly. "Your clothes from the terminal were destroyed. They were contaminated with blood and infection. You'll need a full wardrobe. My assistant will handle it." "I can't afford—" "You're not being asked to pay." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "While you're under my protection, your needs are my responsibility. That includes clothing, medical care, food, and safety, non-negotiable." Under his protection. The phrase should have felt like a collar. Instead, it felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in months. "How long?" I asked. "How long are you planning to keep me here?" "As long as it takes." That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He stood, moving to the window, hands in his pockets. "The blood work came back this morning." My spoon froze halfway to my mouth. "And?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city like it held answers. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "Your blood type is AB negative, Rh-null variant." I frowned. "That's not possible. I'm O positive. It's on my medical records from Colombia." "Those records are wrong, or fabricated." He turned to face me. Rh-null is the rarest blood type in the world. Less than 50 known cases globally. Universal donor for any Rh blood type. Incredibly valuable to certain people with rare blood diseases. The room felt colder suddenly. What are you saying? I'm saying someone knew what you were before you did. Someone tested you, discovered what you carried, and decided you were worth more as a resource than as a person. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. And I'm saying that blood type is a familial marker. Whoever has it passed it through generations, bloodlines. My mind was racing. So whoever needs my blood is likely family or was supposed to have exclusive access to family donors. He moved closer, his presence filling my vision. Maya, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you remember anything about your biological parents? Were you adopted? Foster care? My hand trembled, and I set the spoon down before I dropped it. My mother died when I was 3. Overdose. I barely remember her. My father wasn't in the picture. I grew up in foster care until I aged out at 18. Why does that matter? His jaw clenched. Because that blood type doesn't just appear randomly. It's genetic, specific. And there's only one family in New York that carries it. He paused, and I could see him weighing his words. Mine. The world tilted. What? My family, the Shin bloodline. We carry Renal variants. His voice was level, but his eyes were intense. My father has it. I have it. My grandfather had it. And now you have it. I shook my head, trying to process. That's impossible. I'm not Korean. I'm not your mother. He cut me off. What was her name? Jessica Torres. She was... I tried to remember the few details I knew. Black, beautiful. That's what the social workers told me. I barely remember her. And your father? I don't know. My mother never listed him on the birth certificate. Dante pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. After a moment, he turned the screen toward me. A photograph. Old, grainy, but clear enough. A young Korean man in an expensive suit standing next to a black woman. She was beautiful, laughing, her hair in box braids, her hand on his arm. And she looked exactly like every photograph I'd seen of my mother. That's my great-uncle, Dante said quietly. Shin Jae-sung. He disappeared in New York in 1992. Fell in love with a black woman in Harlem. Your grandmother. My family didn't approve. They erased him from the records, pretended he never existed. He paused. That was a generation ago. But the bloodline didn't end. It just went dormant until it reached you. I couldn't breathe. You're saying I'm blood. The word landed like a bomb. You are the last descendant of that lost branch, Maya. We are strangers by culture, separated by decades, but you carry the genetic legacy my father needs. He isn't draining a niece. He's harvesting a distant relative like a spare part. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the mattress, trying to anchor myself to something solid as my entire understanding of reality shifted. That's why they took me, I whispered. Not because I was random, because I'm blood. Shin blood. Dante's voice was harsh, rare, valuable. That's why I had to be the one to stabilize you when you collapsed. Dr. Kwan couldn't use the blood bank. I had to give you a direct transfusion just to keep your heart beating. The perfect donor for the family patriarch who's dying of leukemia and needs regular infusions to survive. He moved closer, and I could see rage simmering beneath his control. My father took you. My family branded you, and his voice cracked slightly. I've been paying the man who delivered you to them every week. The pieces clicked into place. Detective Hayes, the syndicate, the systematic draining. It wasn't random human trafficking. It was a family business, a patriarch keeping himself alive by consuming his own bloodline. I'm going to be sick. I barely got the words out before Dante moved, grabbing a wastebasket and holding it while I dry heaved. Nothing came up. My stomach was too empty. But the retching wouldn't stop. He rubbed my back with one hand, the touch surprisingly gentle for someone capable of such violence. When the spasms finally stopped, he offered me water from the nightstand. Small sips, he instructed. I obeyed, tasting bile and horror. Your father, I said slowly. The chairman. He's been torturing family. Yes. Dante took the water glass back, setting it aside. 2 years ago, I thought I'd killed him. Staged a coup, took control of the organization, exiled him to South Korea with nothing. I thought he was too weak to survive, too proud to crawl back. His laugh was bitter. I underestimated his will to live. He came back, rebuilt his operation in secret, and when he needed donors, he took what he thought was his by blood. Why didn't he just ask me? The question sounded absurd even as I asked it. If I'm family, if he needed, because you are the anomaly. Dante's voice was cold. My father is obsessed with blood purity. He believes the R-null variant belongs only to the main line. Finding it in you, a black woman, a generation removed from the family name, offended his sense of order. He doesn't see you as family, Maya. He sees you as a genetic theft. Taking your blood isn't just survival to him. It's reclaiming what he thinks belongs to the Shins. I thought I'd run out of tears months ago, but they came anyway, hot and angry, spilling down my cheeks. Dante let me cry, his presence solid and unchanging beside the bed. I'm sorry, he said finally. I'm sorry you're caught in our family's sickness. I'm sorry I didn't find you sooner. I'm sorry. His voice roughened. That my blood is the reason yours was stolen. Through the tears, I looked at him. Really looked. Saw the guilt carved into every line of his face, the rage burning beneath his control, the determination that felt almost violent in its intensity. What happens now? I asked. Now? He stood, straightening to his full height, and for a moment he looked exactly like what he was, a king in his domain, a killer with purpose. Now I call a family meeting. I introduce you as Jae-sung's granddaughter, the rightful Shin heir, and I watch my father's face when he realizes I know exactly what he's been doing. And then his smile was terrible, beautiful. Then I finish what I started 2 years ago, properly this time. He moved toward the door, then paused. There's a panic button on the nightstand. Press it if you need anything. My men are stationed outside your door. You're safe here. Dante. He stopped at the sound of his name. Thank you for... I gestured vaguely at the room, the food, the care, for all of this. He looked back at me, and for just a moment the dangerous crime lord disappeared, replaced by something achingly human. Your family, Maya. His voice softened. We take care of our own, even when that family failed you first. Then he was gone, and I was alone with the truth that felt heavier than any cage. I'd been tortured by my own blood, and saved by it too. 3 days passed in the gilded prison of Dante's penthouse. 3 days of careful meals supervised by Dr. Kwan. 3 days of healing, physical at least. The infection in my arm retreated under aggressive antibiotic therapy. The fever broke completely. Color returned to my skin, and with it, strength to my muscles. But healing brought clarity, and clarity brought fear. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching this relief flooded through me. Finally, a chance to fight back. It's underground, beneath a building in Queens, industrial area abandoned on the surface. They enter through a loading dock. The actual medical center is 2 floors down, clean, professional, not some back-alley butcher shop. How many staff? 3 doctors that I saw regularly, maybe a dozen nurses and techs. They rotate shifts. I closed my eyes, pulling up memories I'd tried to bury. The head doctor is a woman, late 50s, Korean. Goes by Dr. Han. She's efficient, clinical, treats us like livestock, but with medical precision. Us? Dante's voice sharpened. There are others? At least 6 that I saw, all women, different ages, different races, all branded like me. The memory made my skin crawl. They keep us separated most of the time. Can't risk us organizing, I guess, but I saw them in the recovery room after donations. We'd lie there together, too weak to speak, just existing. Names? Do you know their names? I shook my head. We weren't allowed to talk. Any communication earned punishment. But I remember faces. One girl, maybe 19, Southeast Asian, another woman in her 40s, black, with scars that suggested she'd been there a long time. A teenager, white, couldn't have been more than 16. My voice cracked. They take anyone whose blood matches the type they need. Age doesn't matter. Consent doesn't matter. Just the blood. Dante's hands clenched into fists at his sides. The cops. You mentioned cops. I focused, pushing emotion aside for facts. Detective Hayes is the main transport. He picks me up from wherever I'm hiding, drives me to the facility, returns me afterward. He threatened me. Said if I ran, he'd arrest me for prostitution, drug possession, whatever he could make stick. No one would believe a homeless drug addict over a decorated detective. Hayes. Dante pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Marcus Hayes, Detective, Manhattan Precinct. On my payroll since I took control. 18 months. I've been paying him $5,000 a month for information on police investigations into my operations. He looked up, and his expression was carved from ice. I've been funding your torture. The guilt in his eyes was so raw it hurt to witness. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have vetted him better. I should have. He stopped himself, jaw clenched. He's dead. The moment I find him, he's dead. The casual certainty of violence should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something that might have been satisfaction. Dark, primitive. The desire to see your tormentor punished. There are others, I continued. Other cops who help with security at the facility. I don't know names, but I'd recognize faces, uniforms. They're careful, professional. This isn't just corruption. It's organized, systematic. Dante moved to the window, staring out at the city with the focus of a predator, selecting prey. My father always had a talent for corruption. He sees weakness and exploits it. Debt, addiction, family troubles. He finds the leverage and applies pressure until good men become his tools. Hayes didn't seem like a good man to me. No, Dante agreed. Some people are just waiting for permission to be monsters. My father excels at granting that permission. A knock at the door interrupted us. Dante's entire demeanor changed. The man who'd been discussing murder and corruption disappeared, replaced by cold authority. Come. The door opened. A young man entered, mid-20s, Korean, dressed in a dark suit that screamed security. His eyes were sharp, alert, scanning the room in a way that suggested military training. Mr. Shin, we have a situation. Dante's expression didn't change, but I felt the tension in him spike. Speak. Patrol spotted an NYPD cruiser making repeated passes of the building, 4 times in the last hour. Detective Marcus Hayes is driving. The name hit me like a physical blow. My breath caught, chest tightening. The room suddenly felt too small, too warm. I stumbled backward, my hip hitting the edge of the bed. Hayes, here, Maya. Dante was beside me instantly, his hand steady on my shoulder. Look at me. Focus. But I couldn't. All I could see was Hayes' face leaning into the back of his cruiser, his breath hot against my ear as he whispered what would happen if I tried to run, his hand on my arm as he dragged me into the facility, his indifferent expression as I begged, pleaded, sobbed. He knows I'm here. My voice sounded distant, disconnected from my body. He's coming for me. He'll take me back, and they'll... No one is taking you anywhere. Dante's voice cut through the panic like a knife. His hands framed my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. Do you hear me? No one touches you. I don't care if he's wearing a badge. I don't care if he brings the entire NYPD. You are safe. You don't understand. He'll find a way. He always finds a way. He has the law on his side. And I have something better. Dante released me, turning to his guard. Sung, bring Hayes to me. Sung's eyebrows rose fractionally, the only sign of surprise. Alive? Alive, for now. Dante's smile was terrible. I want to have a conversation with the man who's been on my payroll while trafficking my family. Sir, if he's still in uniform. I don't care if he's standing in the middle of Times Square in full-dress blues. Bring him to me, quietly if possible, violently if necessary. Sung nodded and left without another word. The door closed and silence fell over the room like a heavy blanket. I sank onto the edge of the bed, shaking. You're going to kill a cop. They'll come after you. The entire system will. The system already looks the other way for worse. Dante knelt in front of me, bringing himself to eye level. Maya, Hayes isn't here in an official capacity. He's here because my father sent him. He's not investigating. He's hunting. And that makes him fair game. What if you're wrong? What if he's just... 4 passes in an hour? That's not routine patrol. That's surveillance. His hand covered mine where it gripped the sheets. He knows where you are because someone told him. My father's reach is longer than I anticipated. But that's about to change. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it highlighted how deep this went, how many people were complicit, how vast the syndicate's reach truly was. "Your father," I said slowly. "You keep talking about taking him down, but he's the chairman. He has resources, connections, power. How does one person fight that?" Dante's smile was sharp. "I'm not one person. I'm the chaebol, the supreme boss. I have an entire organization at my command. Resources my father no longer controls. Connections he burned when he tried to have me killed 2 years ago." He stood, moving to a cabinet against the wall and pulling out a crystal decanter. "My father made one critical mistake when he came back from exile." "What's that?" He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a glass. "He forgot that loyalty isn't bought with fear alone. It's earned through respect, strength, vision." He took a sip, his throat working as he swallowed. "The men who follow me do so, because I pulled this organization out of the shadows my father cast. I modernized, legitimized where possible, made us powerful rather than just feared. My father wants to return to the old ways, brutal, medieval, operating like it's still the 1980s. He turned, leaning against the cabinet. "The organization has chosen sides, and they chose me. But if the syndicate is his, the syndicate is a side project, a desperate old man's attempt to stay alive long enough to reclaim what he lost. It's funded off the books, staffed with mercenaries and corrupt officials he's blackmailed or bought." Dante's eyes met mine. "It's powerful, but it's not invincible. And now that I know it exists, I can dismantle it." "How?" "By removing every piece that supports it. Hayes is one piece. Dr. Hahn and her staff are others. The facility itself, the financial pipeline." He took another drink. "I cut off each resource until my father is isolated. Then I remove him. Permanently." The casual way he discussed patricide should have been shocking, but I'd learned enough about this world to understand. Family or not, the chairman was a threat, and threats were eliminated. "What do you need from me?" I asked. He looked surprised. "You've already given me enough. The facility location, the staff details, Hayes' involvement." "No." I stood, moving toward him with more confidence than I felt. "I mean, what do you need from me to help end this? I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you fight my battle." "Maya, I'm a 3rd-year med student." I cut him off. "I've done rotations in trauma surgery, emergency medicine, forensic pathology. I know how to read medical records, identify controlled substances, trace pharmaceutical supply chains. If the syndicate is running a medical operation, I can help you understand it. Exploit it. Destroy it." He studied me for a long moment, and I could see him weighing risks against benefits. "You understand what you're offering? This isn't academics. This is war. People will die. Some of them might deserve it. Others will just be casualties." "I've been a casualty for 9 weeks." I held his gaze. "I'd rather be a soldier." Something in his expression shifted. Respect, maybe, or recognition. He set down his glass and closed the distance between us. This close, I could see the details I'd been cataloging unconsciously. The exact shade of his eyes, deep brown that looked black in certain light, the scar through his eyebrow, the way the tattoos on his neck seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. "You're not what I expected," he said quietly. "What did you expect?" "Broken, afraid, fragile." His hand lifted, and this time when he touched my face, his fingers actually made contact, warm skin against the unbandaged side of my cheek. "You're none of those things." "I am all of those things." My voice came out softer than intended. "But I'm also angry, and anger is better fuel than fear." His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I felt the touch everywhere. A current running through me that had nothing to do with terror, and everything to do with something far more dangerous. Attraction to a man who killed people, who discussed murder over breakfast, who held me with hands that had dealt death and offered them like they could also offer salvation. "Be careful with that anger," he murmured. "It burns hot, but fire consumes everything, including the person who wields it." "Then we'll burn together." The words hung between us, charged with meaning I hadn't intended. His eyes darkened, pupils dilating, and for a moment, I thought he might close the distance, might kiss me, might blur the lines between protector and something else entirely. Instead, he stepped back, breaking the moment. "When Sung brings haze," he said, his voice carefully controlled, "I want you there. I want you to see him powerless, afraid, facing consequences. Will you be strong enough for that?" I thought about Hayes's hands on me, his voice in my ear, his indifference to my suffering, and I felt that anger Dante had warned about burning bright and vicious in my chest. "I'll be strong enough." "Good." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Maya, what you said about burning together?" He looked back, and his expression was unreadable. "Be careful making promises to men like me. We have a tendency to hold people to them." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the ghost of his touch on my face and the certainty that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. I was falling for the monster who'd saved me, and that might be more dangerous than anything the syndicate could do. The call came 3 hours later. I was in the library. "The facility in Queens," Dante continued conversationally. "Tell me about it." "I don't know what you're talking about." Hayes's voice shook despite the defiance. "I'm a cop. I don't—" Dante pressed harder. A thin line of blood appeared, crimson against pale skin. Hayes screamed. "That was just a scratch." Dante's tone remained calm. "Let me rephrase. Tell me about the facility or I'll take a finger, then another. Then we'll get creative." Okay. Hayes was gasping now, tears streaming down his face. "The facility, it's in Long Island City, beneath the old Steinway factory. The chairman runs it. I just transport the girls, that's all. I don't hurt anyone, I just drive." "You just drive?" Dante's voice was arctic. "You just transport kidnapped women to be systematically drained of blood. You just threaten them into silence. You just deliver them back to homelessness and hope they're too afraid to run." He leaned closer. "That's not innocence, detective. That's complicity." "I didn't have a choice." Hayes's voice broke. "The chairman had evidence. My gambling debts. Some things I did when I was younger. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd ruin me, my career, my family, everything. So you chose to ruin others instead." Dante straightened, looking down at Hayes with something that might have been contempt. "Cowardice, dressed as necessity. How original." He turned to me. "Maya, do you have any questions for Detective Hayes?" I stepped closer, looking down at the man who'd haunted my nightmares, who'd dragged me to that facility twice a week for 9 weeks, who'd threatened me, terrorized me, treated me like cargo. "The other girls," I said. "Where does he take them after donations?" Hayes's eyes shifted away. "Look at her when she speaks." Dante's voice cracked like a whip. "And answer honestly, or we continue our previous conversation about fingers." "Back to wherever they're staying," Hayes said quickly. "The tunnels, shelters. Some of them have jobs. We drop them off. Tell them when to be ready for the next pickup." "And if they refuse?" Hayes swallowed. "We make sure they understand refusal isn't an option." "How?" I pressed. His silence was answer enough. The bruises I'd seen on the other girls, the way some of them flinched at shadows. Violence as persuasion. "One more question," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "If I'd run, really run, left the state, what would have happened?" Hayes's laugh was bitter. "You think you could have run? The chairman has people everywhere. Cops, feds, border patrol. You wouldn't have made it out of New York before someone picked you up." He met my eyes. "There was never any escape, sweetheart. You were always his." The casualness of it made my blood run cold. He was probably right. Without Dante, I'd have been trapped forever. "Thank you, Detective." Dante's hand settled on my lower back. "You've been very helpful." Hope flickered in Hayes's eyes. "So I can go?" "Absolutely not." Dante smiled coldly. "You're going to tell my men everything. Every name, every location, every detail. And when you're done, we'll discuss what happens next." "You can't kill a cop? Who said anything about killing you? Death is release. I'm going to make sure you live long enough to regret every choice that brought you here." He guided me toward the door. As we stepped into the hallway, I heard Hayes start to sob. The door sealed behind us. "Are you all right?" Dante asked. I nodded, though I wasn't sure. I thought seeing him afraid would feel better, like justice. But it doesn't change what happened. "No, It doesn't. His hand cupped my jaw. But you survived long enough for me to find you. That takes strength most people don't have. Before I could respond, an alarm shrieked through the building. Red lights strobed, the sound deafening. Dante's entire demeanor changed. He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the stairs. What's happening? Breach. Someone's inside the building. Who? My father knows where you are, and he's decided subtle doesn't work. We ran. Sung appeared with 3 other men, all drawing weapons. Gunfire echoed from above. How many? Dante asked without breaking stride. At least a dozen, professional. They bypassed security like they had the codes. The chairman had access when this was his building. I should have changed them all. Dante cursed, then shoved me towards Sung. Get her to the panic room. Seal it. Don't open it for anyone but me. Sir, you need backup. I need her safe. Everything else is secondary. Go. Sung grabbed my arm, pulling me away. I reached for Dante. Wait, you can't. But he was already gone, running toward the combat. Sung dragged me through corridors. We passed bodies, men in tactical gear bleeding on expensive carpet. A figure appeared ahead with an assault rifle. Sung shoved me behind him and fired 3 times. The man dropped. Keep moving. We reached a door. Sung pressed his palm to it, and it glowed blue. The door opened to a panic room. Reinforced walls, monitors, supplies. Inside, Sung ordered. I stumbled in. He started to follow, then jerked backward, blood spraying. He'd been shot. I screamed, reaching for him, but he shoved me hard. I fell backward, and he slammed the door shut. Through the reinforced window, I watched him turn to face his attacker, still firing as blood poured from his shoulder. The door sealed with a hydraulic hiss, locks engaged. Safe. I was safe. But Dante was out there dying. I moved to the monitors, cycling through feeds. The penthouse was a war zone. Then I found him. Dante moved through chaos like death incarnate, his white shirt stained red. He fought with brutal efficiency, but there were so many of them. I watched him take cover, reload. His movements were slowing. Then I saw the thermal readout. His heat signature was wrong, too hot, fever hot. I cycled to medical monitors. His vitals appeared. Heart rate, 152 BPM. Blood pressure, 95/60, too low. Temperature, 103.8 degrees. Blood oxygen, 88%, dropping. He was crashing. Then I remembered. 3 days ago, the transfusion. He'd given me his blood. His body hadn't recovered. He was fighting on empty, going into hypovolemic shock. I watched him stumble, catch himself. His aim was off. If he didn't get a transfusion soon, he'd die. And the only person with compatible blood was locked in a panic room. I pounded on the door. Let me out! But it wouldn't open. I was going to watch him die because he'd saved me. Then I saw it. A panel labeled Emergency Medical Override. I ripped it open. Instructions. Authorized medical personnel may override lockdown. But I wasn't authorized. I had no ID, no code. I looked at the monitors. Dante had fallen, still firing but barely moving. He was dying. My eyes fell on the medical supplies, then on my arm, the veins carrying blood he'd given me. I'd been a donor for 9 weeks. I knew how to set up a transfusion. But first, I needed to get out. I grabbed an IV needle, placed it against my inner elbow. If I dropped my blood pressure fast enough, the panic room would think I was hemorrhaging and open automatically. I looked at Dante's fading heat signature on the monitor. No choice. I pressed the needle in and pushed. Blood spilled over my arm, dripping to the floor. Pain exploded. My vision swam. Come on, I whispered. The monitors changed. My heart rate spiked. Blood pressure dropped. Occupant medical emergency detected. Initiating emergency override. The door hissed. Locks disengaged. Door unsealing in 3, 2, 1. The door opened. I grabbed medical supplies and ran. Blood dripped from my arm, but I couldn't stop. Gunfire had ceased. I found him in the destroyed living room. He lay on his back, perfectly still, pale, lips blue. I dropped beside him, fingers to his neck. Pulse, weak, but there. Dante, stay with me. His eyes fluttered. Maya, panic room. Why? Shut up, you're going into shock. You need blood now. No hospitals. I'm not taking you to a hospital. I'm giving you mine. I tied the tourniquet, found my vein, inserted the needle. Blood flowed into the tube. Then I found his vein and connected the line, his blood given back to him. "This is insane," he whispered. "You'll kill yourself." "You gave me your blood when I needed it. Now I'm giving it back. Fair trade." His hand found mine. "You're impossible." "You walked into a fight 3 days after donating blood. What did you think would happen?" "I thought I'd win faster." I laughed despite everything. "You're dying and making jokes." "If I'm dying, at least it's looking at you." The words hit my chest. "You're not dying. I won't let you." His eyes unfocused. The transfusion was working, but not fast enough. "Maya, promise me. If I don't—" "No, don't you dare leave me. Promise you'll finish it. Destroy the syndicate. Free the others. I promise. But you're going to be there. You don't get to save me and then die." "How does it work?" His eyes held mine. "You live. You survive. And we burn it all down together." His thumb traced my knuckles. Together. Together. His eyes closed. His breathing steadied. I heard footsteps. I grabbed his gun, raising it toward the doorway. Sung appeared, bloodied but standing. "The building is secure. The chairman's men are dead or captured." I lowered the gun. "Dante needs a doctor." "Dr. Kwan is coming, 5 minutes." Sung assessed the scene. "You saved his life." "He saved mine first. This makes us even." "No, this makes you family. The kind that bleeds for each other." Dr. Kwan arrived and took over, nodding approval at my transfusion. "You may have saved his life and possibly killed yourself. How much blood?" "Half a pint. Not dangerous." "Combined with your earlier wound, you're at a full donation. You need IV fluids and bed rest." I didn't argue. The adrenaline was fading. Weakness crept through my limbs. I'd given him what he'd given me. Blood for blood. Life for life. Somewhere between being caught and saved, Dante's shin had become mine to protect too. 6 months later, Winter returned to Grand Central Terminal. I stood beneath the clock, no longer scrubbing floors. I wore cashmere now. My reflection showed someone healthy, strong. The scar on my cheek remained, not a brand but a mark of survival. "You're thinking too loud," Dante's voice came from behind. I turned. He stood there in a charcoal suit, a thin scar on his arm, the only visible reminder of that night. "I was thinking about the first time we stood here. You were dying." "So were you. You just hid it better." His hand caught mine. "I'm not hiding anything anymore." 6 months of reconstruction, of 2 broken people learning to fit together. "The hearing is tomorrow," I said. "Hayes' death, my testimony. I'll be there, every moment. The syndicate? Dismantled. Dr. Hahn arrested, facility seized. The other girls safe, healing, free. And medical school? You start next month. Columbia. Full scholarship." I smiled. "Did you threaten to donate money?" "I merely suggested they reconsider." Very politely. I laughed. Dante grew serious. "I'm going legitimate, transitioning the organization. It'll take years, but I don't want you tied to a criminal empire." "I knew what you were when you caught me. I chose you anyway." "You chose survival." "No, I chose you. There's a difference." "Maya, I love you. I know it's complicated. I know we're built on blood and trauma. But I don't care. I love you." "I love you too." He kissed me. A claiming, a promise. When he pulled back, his forehead pressed to mine. "I fell in love with you in that bunker, when you refused to let me die." "Yours," I agreed, "as long as you're mine." "Always." We stepped into December cold. A car waited. As we drove through Manhattan, past Grand Central, past the tunnels, past everything, Dante's arm came around me. "Where are we going?" "Home." Not a penthouse, not a fortress, just a brownstone in Brooklyn. Quiet, normal. We'd never be ordinary. We were blood and violence and survival, the ghost and the reaper. 2 broken pieces fused into something unbreakable. I'd spent 9 weeks as a ghost, but he caught me when I fell. And now we stood strong enough that neither would fall alone. We were each other's salvation. And in this dark, violent world, that was the closest thing to grace we'd ever find.